Hello again, and welcome to this last week discussing the philosophy of epistemology. Today, we're going to at first we're going to start talking about the distinction between internalism and externalism. And later this week, or the second lecture, will be on a few different views in epistemology that basically lead us from epistemology into metaphysics. It's going to be kind of historical side, discussing some classic views held by different empiricists and rationalists and Immanuel Kant, actually. So that'll be fun. All right, so internalism versus externalism. What is justification anyways? It's an interesting question. So hopefully you've done the reading and you've got at least some idea of what we're going to be talking about. So think back to what we covered last week, evidentialism. Evidentialism is the idea that in order to know, one has to have justification, and in order to have justification, or what justification is in some senses, is to have sufficient evidence for one's beliefs. And we can ask, well, okay, well, what is evidence? What is it to have evidence for someone's beliefs, right? Hopefully, I mean, if you have evidence for your beliefs, hopefully you have further true beliefs that you use to justify things that you claim or that you know, right? But it could, it could also be that evidence simply is just the facts that you have access to that support certain claims, right? So here's an interesting question, right? So when it comes to evidentialism, when it comes to needing justification for your beliefs, and we say you need evidence, well, question: what is evidence? Is evidence just your beliefs, the things that are sort of in your head? Or is evidence the facts that are out there in the world that your beliefs are trying to sort of get onto? In a sense, is evidence itself internal or external? So here's a kind of way of thinking about it, and this is a hopefully good way to get you into thinking about this whole internalism and externalism issue in epistemology. So imagine you're a scientist and you're trying to prove proposition P. I don't know, maybe it's that snow is white, right? Or, that quarks exist or something like that. Say you run an experiment and come up with the result Q, right? So proposition Q is your experimental result. As it turns out, Q, the sort of, fact out there in the world, your real result, supports P, even proves P beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? So your proposition that, quarks exist, that you're trying to prove, you do some experiment, you come up with Q. Q is this bit of, data, it's a result, it proves P, but you have no idea that Q is even relevant to P, right? It's too complicated or too, unclear from, just having finished your experiment that Q and P are related. So to you, Q is just something like experimental data that you've received in your quest to prove P. So you have P, you have Q, but you don't know that Q supports P. Question: do you have evidence for P? Is Q evidence for P? Interesting answers. You could go both ways. If you were to say yes, Q is evidence for P. It's the fact out there in the world is evidence for P. Then in a sense, you are kind of externalist about evidence. That is, evidence counts as the facts, like, the actual facts out in the world are the things that count as evidence for some given proposition. If you think no, in this case, that you don't have evidence for P because, you don't see Q, you don't believe Q supports P, then you might be an internalist about evidence. You might think, look, no, you don't have evidence for P because you don't recognize, you haven't connected Q and P yet in the right sort of way, so such that Q is actually counts as evidence for P, right? It's just not supporting P. So at this point, no, you do not know P and you do not have evidence for P. Interesting dichotomy. Now, think about it. When you know something, do you need to know that you know it? This is the KK principle. It states that in order to know something, in order to know P, one must know that they know P. Now, this principle has come in for a lot of criticism. In a sense, it seems plausible, right? If you know P, then upon reflection, you should be able to determine that you know it. But it's a little bit too strong of a requirement, right? It seems problematic to say that in order to know, one must know that they know, because you end up with a kind of regress, right? It doesn't seem like, I mean, so maybe I know, so I know that snow is white, and I probably know that that snow is white. But do I know that 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 snow is white? That seems a little bit it's something I've never even thought about. Right. And it seems weird to think that I have to know that I know that I know that I know that I know that snow is white in order to know that snow is white in the first place, right? So we've got some sort of regress issue. Similarly, right, I don't, maybe I know that I'm seeing my computer screen right now, but I don't know that I know that I'm seeing my computer screen right now, right? Because it's possible that, I'm in some kind of um, state being deceived by an evil demon or asleep. So maybe we can weaken this to the JK principle. The JK principle says something like this. In order to know P, some proposition P, one must be justified in believing that they know P. That is, one has to have a reason for believing that they know the proposition in question. Now, interesting question. How is one justified in believing that they know P? Well, you just kind of reflect, right? When you think you know something, you reflect on the fact that you think you know it, and you come to recognize that you believe it. Well, that seems like pretty good evidence for believing that you know P. That looks like a good kind of justification, an internal justification. Now, another question, do you need internal access to the reasons that you have that justify you in believing that P? Well, sure, right? If you think you know P, and you reflect on your knowledge that P, and you come to realize that you believe that you know P, well, then the basis of all of that should, in some sense, you would think, come from your the availability of you to internally reflect on what reasons you have, right? You've got to recognize that you have reasons that justify you for believing P, and that's part of what it is to believe that you know P, right? And recognizing that you have justification for believing P. Internalism about justification is basically this kind of view. It says that you can, on reflection, determine what your reasons are for your justified beliefs. You have some kind of internal access to the reasons that you have for believing the things that you know. Sometimes you have information available to you, but you haven't sort of put everything in the right order, in a sense, right? Maybe there are some things that you don't currently know, even though you have justification for believing them and they're true. It's just, you haven't connected the justification with the belief in the right sort of way yet, and so you haven't kind of like organized your thinking. If you haven't organized your thoughts in certain ways, then what you got to do is do some reasoning, And once you do some reasoning, that'll help you see what justifies what beliefs that you have, and you can organize your thoughts into some way, and then come to see what beliefs support what other beliefs, and then come to know things, right? That's kind of a picture of internalism. There's a problem here, though: skepticism. When you have justification for your belief that P, does the justification for your belief that P guarantee that P is true? No, of course not, right? Justification for internalists is a feature of internal states. It's a property of your beliefs or of your thoughts. And you can be wrong about those things, right? You believe that P, you have a reason for believing P, so you are justified in believing P. That's an internal state. It could still be the case, even if you're justified in believing P, that you're wrong about P, right? So, like, take the example, I believe that my car is in the parking lot right where I left it. I have good justification for that. I remember leaving it there, and usually cars don't get stolen, right? Those are my two bits of justification. That seems like it seems like I've got pretty good reason for believing that, and that, or for thinking that I know that my car is in the parking lot. But I could be wrong, right? I could, even though I'm justified in that belief and probably have knowledge, I could be wrong. Now, just because your belief that P is justified by another belief that Q doesn't mean that you know P, because Q could also be false, right? Yeah. And it seems like if Q could be false, then it doesn't seem like you know that you know. Internalism then is in some way problematic because justification isn't sufficiently connected to the truth. You can be justified in your beliefs and still fail to know, simply because you have good reasons for believing in falsehoods, right? The things that you believe could have, you could be unlucky, and you could have a good reason for believing it, but it just so happens that it's now false. Justification, on the externalist picture, right? So internalism has this problem, it seems like, that justification isn't sufficiently connected to truth. And externalism is the view that justification should be more closely or tightly connected to the truth. Like, whether or not one's beliefs are justified should in some way be determined by how likely those beliefs are to be true, not whether or not you have some reason for thinking they're true, right? Like I just said, the reasons that you have could be false, and then that would be a problem. Or you could have some good reasons for thinking that something is true, but those reasons could, by happenstance, not be connected to the truth. And so you end up believing something with good justification, but you end up believing something false with good justification, and so you lack knowledge. That seems problematic. That's what happens in internalism. Externalists believe that there should be a more objective connection between beliefs and the truth. Justification and knowledge, they think, shouldn't depend on properties of my mental states, right? Whether or not I have good reasons for believing one thing over another, right? Those are properties of my mental states. So, according to internalism, another issue, you need to be able to think about your justification for your own beliefs in order to be justified. Otherwise, it seems like you lack knowledge, right? You've got to be able to recognize that you are justified in believing something in order for it to, in some way or another, count as knowing. But that seems like a problem. It's a little bit what some people say, it's overly intellectualized. It's too complex a theory of how knowledge works. Why? Well, and think about these three cases. Your grandma who has a slight case of dementia, baby Timmy, who's too young to be able to speak, and puppy Joey, Pupper, uh, a dog, has, no ability to speak whatsoever. Now, question, don't these three individuals have knowledge sometimes? Right? I mean, like your grandma maybe is slowly fading from dementia, but she knows your name most of the time. Baby Timmy is too young to, know any school curricula, like doesn't know any math, but Timmy knows what his mother looks like, right? Puppy Joey, at the very least, knows when I get home and pull up the driveway, right? I mean, as soon as I do, he runs to the door and starts barking. But in these three cases, these people and creatures, they don't have the ability to think critically about their own internal states, right? Grandma is maybe a little bit too frail in most cases. Baby Timmy has no idea what an internal state is, neither does Puppy Joey, right? Oh, sorry. Grandma still knows your name, even though she's slowly fading. Baby Timmy knows his parents are, and Joey knows, um, the problem here is this: if internalism is true, then in order to know things, you have to have good reasons for knowing them, and you have to be able to recognize or have access to those reasons. You have to be able to reflect and realize that they are your reasons for knowing. But that seems to rule out the possibility of basic knowledge for creatures and people that are not highly cognitively aware of their own inner workings. And that just seems sort of problematic. Sometimes babies and puppies and grandmas seem to have beliefs and knowledge without having to be super good at reflecting on their own inner lives. So that brings us finally to an externalist view of justification or knowledge, right? So the externalist says, look, internalism has this problem. And so let's come up with theories that actually do the work of connecting justification and the truth. And the first one that I'm going to look at too is the causal theory of knowledge. Now, the causal theory of knowledge takes seriously the idea that what makes your belief justified is a special relation between your belief and the external world. A special relation not between your beliefs, where one belief supports another, but an actual external relation, right? Where in order to know something, your belief has to be set up and connected up in the right way to the actual facts. So the causal theory of knowledge can basically be stated like this. If S knows that P, then S's belief that P was caused by the fact that P. So the idea here is there are facts out in the world, and facts causally interact with people, and people go around getting affected by facts and then come to believe those facts. And when you believe a fact, you know that fact. Well, this view definitely ensures a truth connection, right? It gets that part right. It definitely goes beyond the internalist view that seems to have a problem, right? Because it seems like, well, okay, if maybe I do have good internal reasons for believing what I believe, but if one of my beliefs ends up being false, then I don't know it. But if the fact that, whatever that belief is about actually caused me to come to have that belief, well, then it seems like I'm just not going to be in a certain kind of position where I could possibly be wrong about that fact, right? If the fact itself is the thing that, the thing that by which I came to have the belief that I have, then I just can't be wrong about that. So this makes being justified connected to the actual facts. And so that seems like a good thing. Sadly, though, the causal theory of knowledge, at least this very basic version of it, it's got some real big problems. There are too many counterexamples. Here's one that needs to be dealt with. Imagine you believe proposition Z. And proposition Z states this. Proposition Z is that you just took a drug that made you forget everything you ever knew, right? That's the only thing you believe, right? Or that's what you believe. You believe Z right now. Now, it turns out Z is true, right? You did. You just took a drug, and that drug made you forget everything that you've ever known. It just so happens that this drug also, or while it makes you forget everything, it then immediately fills your head with new and totally random beliefs, right? So this drug, somebody takes it and all of a sudden, they forget everything that they ever know. And then all of a sudden, crazy stuff comes flying to their head, right? They start believing like, oh, dreams are, powerful, gifts from God, or dogs are actually space robots, or, the moon is made of green cheese. These are the kinds of things that this drug actually, fills your head with as soon as you take it, right? It kind of wipes your memory and then fills it with these random beliefs. All right. Now, it just so happens that when you took the drug, right, it wiped your memory, and the belief that it gave you was the belief in proposition Z, the belief that you just took a drug that made you forget everything that you ever knew. Now, guess why this is a problem? Here, taking the drug caused you to believe Z, but it didn't do so in the right way, right? So remember back to here, if you know that P, then your belief was caused by the fact that P. And it is a fact. Z is a fact. You did just take a drug that made you forget everything you knew. However, the drug seems not in the right kind of way causally relevant to your new belief that you just took a drug that made you forget everything that you ever knew. Why? Because the drug fills your head randomly with stuff, right? It causes you to believe random things. Anything. It could have caused you to believe that you just took a drug that, made you king of the world. But it didn't. It made you believe that you just took a drug that made you forget everything you ever knew. And so it just so happens that it's spot on, right? It just so happens that it gives you this random belief that is true. That seems problematic, right? This is what's called a case of causal deviance. Here we've got the wrong kind of thing causing the thing that we're looking for. And because it's the wrong kind of thing or the wrong kind of causal chain, then we can't, it seems like, the causal theory's got a problem. We can't say in this case that your belief in Z is actually a case of knowledge, even though your belief in Z is caused by the fact that Z. Another problem with the causal theory of knowledge, and I think this is really one of the biggest ones for it, is that it's really difficult to know generalizations. Generalizations are the kinds of claims like that all men are mortal or that all cats are mammals. They're things that, you say where about things in general, right? Anything that's got an all in front of it usually counts as a generalization, especially true ones. And so we know these things, right? It is a fact. It seems like it's a fact, at least, that all men are mortal. And as far as we know, it's a fact that all cats are mammals. But these facts aren't really the kinds of things that can cause you to believe them, right? I mean, how can you possibly be in contact with the fact that all cats are mammals? I mean, sure, you can go and check a cat, right? You can go and check out a cat and be like, oh, look, this cat, nurses its young and has live babies and has warm blood. It must be a mammal. But that doesn't tell you that all cats are mammals. That just tells you that that cat is a mammal. How do you know that all cats are mammals? It just doesn't seem like the kind of fact that, exists in the world that can cause anything, right? Uh, there are more difficult cases, like, mathematical facts, like, 2 plus 3 equals 5. That's true, but it doesn't seem like it's the kind of thing that can cause you to believe it, right? Where is that mathematical fact? It's not walking around in the world. You can find out that, from counting particular things, objects, that, 2 of these objects and 3 of these objects makes 5 objects total. But that again is an instance. There you just know that when you add these 2 objects to these 3 objects, that you have now have 5 objects. That doesn't tell you that for all space and all of time and forever and ever and always, that 2 plus 3 equals 5. But it seems like we know that fact, that 2 plus 3 equals 5 forever and always. How do we know it if the causal theory is true? It can't be that the fact somehow caused us to believe it. So it seems problematic here. The causal theory of knowledge seems at least to not get us far enough. This brings us to a much a better theory, externalist theory, I think. And the better externalist theory is called reliabilism. This view just fares better generally than the causal theory and is still pretty commonly held today by epistemologists that are externalists at the very least. Now, think about this. Generally, when we fail to know something, there, like, you could ask, like, well, what is it? Whenever I think that I know something and then I find out that I didn't actually know it, I could try and parse through each of those cases and try and figure out what's similar in each of those cases. Like, why did I fail to know what I was trying to know in that case? Well, and you might think, oh, okay, well, I failed to know because I fell into some kind of error, right? We oftentimes fall victim to perceptual illusions, or we reason poorly, or, we trust the wrong person. Someone lied and we trusted them. Now, what is it that each of these cases has in common? Well, in each case, there's some party that is in some way at fault. And that party is unreliable, right? So sometimes in particular, we fall victim to perceptual illusions. I don't know if you've ever heard you can look up the Mueller-Lyer illusion. It's I might show you in a later thing. But yeah, the Mueller-Lyer illusion, it's like these 2 lines that look like they are different lengths, but in fact, as a matter of fact, they're exactly the same length. And the reason that we're sort of fooled is because of the ways that our eyes work. We fall victim to this perceptual illusion. Our perceptual faculty in this case is unreliable at picking out that these 2 lines are the same. Sometimes we have cognitive biases, right? So sometimes we, do things poorly because we are, distracted, right? Sometimes when we're distracted, we tend to reason poorly, and so when we're distracted in reasoning, our reasoning becomes unreliable. And then, sometimes people are just liars, right? And people that are liars are unreliable people when it comes to, finding things out from them. So if the failures in these cases are all unreliable, then maybe what it takes to know is that our beliefs are the product of some reliable belief forming process, right? So maybe the unreliability tracks when we go wrong, and reliability tracks when we go right. Reliability being the thing that would allow us to know. Reliability being the thing that sort of subs in as the structure or the kind of thing that justification really is. So here we've got the reliabilist thesis. S is justified in believing P if and only if S's belief in P is the result of a reliable process. That is, S's belief in P comes about because some reliable process got started and output your belief that P. So here's some ideas, right? Generally, perceiving things in front of you, like the computer screen or phone screen that you're looking at right now, um, that's a reliable process. And so generally, that process kicks out beliefs like that you're looking at a screen right now. And they're true, right? They're true, they're good. And so you're justified, it seems, in believing those things because they are the result of a reliable process. Listening to the right people, right? Like people that aren't going to lie to you, your teachers. Similarly, a reliable process. You can come to know great things, right, on the basis of listening to the right people. Reliable people. Using logic and correct reasoning, trying to avoid cognitive biases. Again, another reliable process. So the idea here is really just this. When it comes to knowing something, there's this external relation between your belief and the world. And what is that external relation? Well, it's that your belief was caused, but it was caused by some feature of the world that is reliable, some feature of the world that is, reliably connected to the truth. So there's the truth, the facts out there, they kind of impinge on this reliable process, whatever that process is. And then the output of that process is your belief. And as long as your belief is the output of a reliable process, then poof, you've got knowledge. Now, of course, there are problems for reliabilism too. I think that they're not necessarily as damning, but they are difficult problems to overcome. So first, something like skepticism or the brain in the vat. And in a funny way, this problem for reliabilism is sort of the opposite than what you would think. It's not actually a problem about skepticism. It's just sort of the fact that skepticism is possible. Reliabilism gives us the wrong result. Now, here's what I mean. So now imagine that we have a brain in a vat that's hooked up to a computer. And then we also have this unsuspecting person, Bob. Bob is also hooked up to the computer, but he's a normal person, going about his everyday life. Whenever Bob goes out into the world, there's a transistor in his head, and it reports back to the computer exactly what's going on, like when he's seeing trees, when he's smelling flowers, when he's eating apples, etc. Right? It kind of tells the computer everything that's going on. And then the computer triggers the same mental happenings that are happening to Bob in the brain of the vat, right? So when Bob is eating an apple, the computer gets alerted and it triggers what it would be like to be eating an apple for the brain in the vat, right? So now every time Bob goes through a certain process, the brain in a vat seems like it's going through that same process. Now, question, are Bob's beliefs justified? Yeah, sure, right? Bob's beliefs are the result of a reliable process. Bob's going out into the world and seeing things and tasting things and hearing things, and his perceptual system is working just fine. It's reliable. And so it is his beliefs are justified. Second question, are the brain in the vat's beliefs justified? No, they're not. Why? Well, because they're false, right? The brain in the vat is coming to have certain beliefs on the basis of a very unreliable process, right? The brain in the vat thinks that it's eating an apple, that it's smelling some flowers, that it's, dancing in the high grass at noon. Whenever Bob is, but the brain in the vat isn't doing any of those things, right? The brain in the vat is a brain in a vat. It's stuck. It's not doing any of those things, but it's coming to have those beliefs. Now, coming to have those beliefs when they're always false, well, that's a very unreliable process, right? It's a very unreliable process for the brain in the vat to be going through. All right, so result, Bob's beliefs seem justified because they're a cause of a reliable process. The brain in the vat's beliefs seem unjustified because they're not caused by an unreliable, or they're caused by an unreliable process. They're not caused by a reliable process. But wait a minute. Remember back to when we first talked about the brain in a vat scenario? This seems wild to say that Bob's beliefs are justified and the brain in the vat's beliefs aren't justified. Bob's beliefs, Bob has all and only the exact same reasons for his beliefs that the brain in the vat has, right? The brain in the vat is like a cognitive duplicate of Bob. All the exact same things are happening to the brain in the vat, in a sense, that are happening to Bob, right? All the same stimuli are hitting Bob's brain that are hitting the brain in the vat's brain, or the brain in the vat. It's just that when for Bob, it's like there's the actual world causing it, and for the brain in the vat, it's the computer that's causing it. So shouldn't we think that the brain in the vat's beliefs are justified? If Bob's beliefs are justified and the brain in the vat has exactly the same reasons as Bob, then shouldn't the brain in the vat's beliefs be justified too? This is just how we get the problem of skepticism going, right? If you're in the Matrix, which hopefully most of you have seen the movie The Matrix, is basically the robots take over the world and they enslave the human race and make us all into batteries. and people in the Matrix don't know that they're in the Matrix because they're basically just plugged in to this simulation. But yeah, if you're in the Matrix, right, you seem to be justified in all of your beliefs. You look at a hand and you think, yeah, that's a hand. And, it's not a hand. It's a virtual hand. You're just very unlucky. But it seems like you have justification at the very least. That seems like a problem in the end for reliabilism, right? It seems like reliabilism gets the wrong answer for the brain in the vat. The brain in the vat clearly doesn't know anything, but it seems to be justified in its beliefs, right? It would be pretty sad to say, yeah, you know what? The brain in the vat doesn't know anything, and it's not even justified in the beliefs that it has. Like that seems crazy. Like, the brain in the vat is trying as hard as it can, right? To have true beliefs. It's working as hard as the rest of us. Imagine yourself in a scenario in which you were being fooled by an evil demon. If you're being fooled by an evil demon, your belief that grass is green is false. But you've got all the reason in the world to believe it, right? In this basic scenario, according to reliabilism, because your belief is being caused by an unreliable demon, you aren't even justified, right? And if you're not justified, well, that seems sad. Like you're trying as hard as you can to believe that when you believe that grass is green, because it seems as obvious to you as anything. All right. 2 further problems for reliabilism, and then we'll wrap this up. First, accidental reliability. Imagine this scenario. Imagine, unbeknownst to you, a doctor knocks you out, or drugs you up while you're sleeping, and implants a temperature tracker into your brain. This temperature tracker tracks the temperature of the city of New York, and basically outputs or gives you a belief about the temperature at any given moment. Now, here's the thought. Here's the idea. Well, for the rest of your life, unknowingly, you have a true belief about what temperature it currently is in New York City, right? Every time, somebody could ask you, oh, I wonder what temperature it is in New York. Like, you could be across the planet in a totally different place, and you would know what the temperature is in New York at that moment. And, basically, in this case, you don't know that you have this implanted temperature tracker. This belief that you have about the temperature in New York City seems totally random to you. It just seems to like pop into your head every once in a while, right? Like every time you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, I think the temperature in New York is, 72 and 60% humidity, right? That's the kind of thing that happens. Well, in this case, it seems like you have a very reliable process that is outputting this belief that you have. But it also seems like you really have no reason to think that you know what the temperature is in New York City at that moment. You have no good reason to think that you're actually accurate, right? It's not common for people to have implanted temperature trackers in their heads. And so even though this belief is the process or output of a reliable system, it just doesn't seem like knowledge. So this is something that because it's the output of a reliable system, it seems like it should count as knowledge on the reliablest picture, but intuitively it isn't a case of knowledge. And so it seems like reliabilism gets this one wrong. Something's got to give. Something's got to be fixed up. Reliabilism's got to be changed a little bit in order to solve that problem. All right, finally, the most damning objection for reliabilism is the generality objection. And the generality objection is this. It's very unclear when you're talking about whether or not something is reliable, what the level of generality is that you should actually be talking about reliability. Here's what I mean. Take this case. Remember Fake Barn County? Suppose you're in Fake Barn County, right? You're driving through Fake Barn County, and in Fake Barn County, it just so happens that, there's a few real barns, and you stop at one of them and you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that's a beautiful big red barn, right? You come to believe that it's a beautiful big red barn, and you don't know that you're in Fake Barn County, but all the other barns that you passed, or all the other things that seemed like barns that you passed while driving through Fake Barn County, they were all cleverly painted barn facades, right? They're just these like lean-to structures that make it look like there's a barn on the side of the road, but it's not really. And you just got lucky in this case, and you stopped right in front of the one real barn in Fake Barn County that's right by the road. So suppose that you're in Fake Barn County. The general thought here is, well, when you're in Fake Barn County, your barn beliefs are going to be rather unreliable, right? You're going to see these facades and you're going to think, oh, that's a barn. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to be wrong. So your barn beliefs are going to be unreliable, right? So in this case, the thought is your barn belief, even though you're looking at a real barn, your barn belief in this case is unreliable. And so you don't actually know that that's a barn, right? Because it's caused by an unreliable process. Well, is it caused by an unreliable process? What if we zoom out from Fake Barn County to the whole state? We'll just suppose Fake Barn County is in the middle of Ohio, right? And Ohio is filled with real barns. It's just there's this one little goofy town in Ohio, Fake Barn County. And in Fake Barn County, they've erected all of these barn facades. But, everywhere else in Ohio, they think Fake Barn County is crazy. And so, they don't have any barn facades in the rest of Ohio. There's just this one place. All right, cool. So now think about this. Suppose there's like, 100,000 barns in Ohio. There's probably not that many, but and then there's 1,000 fake barns in fake barn county. Now, think about it this way, right? You're in fake barn county, standing in front of a real barn, believing that it's a real barn. And according to reliabilism, if we restrict our thinking to fake barn county, you're very unreliable, right? Because you're standing in one of you're standing in front of the one real barn and all the other ones are fake. And so you're super unreliable because according in fake barn county, you're going to, get most of your barn beliefs wrong. But in Ohio, you're going to get most of your barn beliefs right, right? There's just this one small little corner of Ohio that's got all these fake barns. The rest of Ohio has all got real barns. And so all your barn beliefs in the rest of Ohio are going to be super accurate. So accurate necessarily that even within fake barn county, if we're thinking about the entirety of Ohio with 100,000 barns, then that's just a minuscule fraction of the amount of barn beliefs that you're going to get wrong, right? You're going to get a few wrong when you're in fake barn county, but you're going to get most of them right while you're in the rest of Ohio. So it seems like you are reliable. Well, so now what counts as reliability? Are you reliable while you're in fake barn county because you're in Ohio? Or are you unreliable while you're in fake barn county because fake barn county is filled with fake barns? It's unclear. The level of generality that we're supposed to take when we're judging whether or not something counts as reliable is totally unclear. We need some further reason for thinking that we should take a particular aim. We should think in a particular way about the generality of what it counts, of what counts, and what makes something reliable in the end. All right. Takeaway from this lecture. What can we conclude from this debate over internalism and externalism? Well, I think the debate seems to lie in whether justification, this feature that we need for knowledge, is something that has to do with like the quality or the value, the epistemic value of our reasons for believing, the epistemic value for our beliefs that justify us in the things that we know, or whether or not there's some more objective and valueless feature of the world that is related to truth that gets us to believe in the right things, right? So there's this sense in which the internalist thinks, look, we need to have good reasons for our beliefs in order to know. And the externalist says we need to be sufficiently and connected to the truth, and our beliefs need to be really tightly close, like caused by or something like that, the truth itself. And if there's a disconnect between the truth and our beliefs, that's when we fail to know. Now, in a way, I think the best way to think about moving things forward, these two views aren't actually contrary to one another, right? That is to say that our beliefs need to be caused by, objective features in the world that track truth. That isn't in contrast to the idea that we should have good reasons for our beliefs. And so I think one way to think about this debate is that at the very least going forward, we might try to craft a view that takes both of these issues seriously, and tries to actually, come up with a theory, a grand theory of knowledge that covers both, like, the knowledge that babies and dogs have that's really basic and comes from these reliable processes of, vision and evolution, and also high-level scientific knowledge where we need to have good reasons for our beliefs, and our beliefs need to be based on good evidence. right? It seems like knowledge is this big continuum. There's this really basic stuff that happens at the primitive level, when your dog knows what you smell like or that you're home. But then there's also this highfalutin knowledge, right? Like the kind of knowledge that Einstein came upon when he discovered the theory of general relativity, right? Insofar as like there is some really good knowledge there, you need really good reasons and evidence for believing in those things, right? And so I think in the end, we can take aspects of both views seriously and attempt to construct a theory of knowledge, or at least be open to a theory of knowledge that seriously, incorporates both internalist and externalist uh, insights. But that does, in the end, leave us, with the question: what is justification, anyways? Right? How does justification work? Are there just different kinds of justification, the internal kind and the external kind? Well, I mean, maybe, yeah, maybe we should be pluralists in this case. We should say, you know what, there's lots of kinds of justification, and all the kinds of justification matter for whether or not we really know something. All right. Have a good rest of your day, and please watch the next lecture, which should be posted soon-ish.